Bicycles clattered as they hit the grass. Soccer balls rolled to a stop against the dry earth. Tablets and plastic devices were tossed aside like stones, left forgotten in the tall weeds of the hillside. Hundreds of children pressed together, a swarm of movement and noise under the afternoon sun. Then, movement ceased. A man stepped into the center of the clearing. He did not call for order, nor did he raise his voice to cut through the din. He simply sat. He crossed his legs, placed his hands on his knees, and looked at the ground. Within seconds, the chatter began to fray at the edges. A girl looked up, saw him, and stopped mid-sentence. A boy followed her gaze, then another. The wave of silence moved outward from the center, silencing the restless energy of the crowd. Within a minute, the only sound was the wind moving through the grass. The man raised his head. He looked at the faces before him, locking eyes with one child after another, tracing the expressions of curiosity and uncertainty. The hillside was no longer just a field. It had become a place of waiting. A girl in the front row shifted, her fingers tightening around the straps of her bag. She looked at the grass, then up at him. "My classmates make fun of me when I try to be kind," she said, her voice small but clear enough to carry. "They call it weak." Jesus leaned forward, his gaze steady, absorbing the hurt without looking away. He reached for a flashlight resting on a nearby rock, its metal casing dull in the light. He clicked it on, then placed it face down on the ground. "Does anyone cover a light with a blanket?" he asked. The children shook their heads. He turned the light upward, letting the beam cut through the shadows. "Kindness is the light you carry. If you hide it because of fear or mockery, the world stays dark. Your acts of love are seen, even when no one else acknowledges them. They are not weak, they are essential." The girl relaxed her grip on her bag. She looked at the others, her posture shifting from defensive to attentive. Across the hillside, children sat straighter, their eyes tracking the beam of light. The lesson took hold. They were no longer just listeners, but carriers of something that needed to be seen. A boy near the center raised his hand, his fingers trembling slightly. "How do we talk to God?" he asked. Jesus nodded, prompting the group to speak with the simplicity of a child addressing a father. He recited words of dependence and forgiveness, the air growing dense as the children echoed the rhythm. The silence that followed was heavy. Another child spoke up, her voice tight. "What about those who remain cruel? Do we just let them hurt us?" Jesus did not soften the answer. He explained that forgiveness was not an act of ignoring pain, but a deliberate choice to purge the bitterness from one's own heart. He challenged them to pray for their tormentors, to replace the impulse for retaliation with a different kind of persistence. A ripple of discomfort passed through the group, shoulders slumped. Several children stared at the dirt, their hands clenching into fists as they processed the cost of such a command. It was not a call to weakness, but a demand for a strength they had not yet tested. The atmosphere on the hillside shifted from collective inspiration to individual tension, as each child weighed the difficulty of letting go of the anger they had carried for years. Jesus swept his hand toward the birds, circling in the high currents, and the wildflowers swaying in the grass. He watched a hawk bank against the wind, then turned back to the children. "The Creator who sustains the wild provides for you as well," he said. The wind brushed through the trees, a low, constant sound. He shifted, pressing his palm flat against a large, gray boulder jutting from the earth. "Build your lives on these words," he continued. "Build like a house on solid rock." He traced the rough surface of the stone, showing them how it held firm against the shifting soil. When the storms arrive, when the rain falls, when the floods rise, when the winds beat against your home, the structure built on sand will wash away. Only the house anchored in truth remains standing. He paused, letting the weight of the comparison settle. The children looked from the exposed rock to the valley below. They saw the city, the tall buildings, and the distance they would have to travel. The urgency in his voice transformed the air. They realized then that the lessons were not just for the hillside, but for the life waiting for them in the streets. They sat perfectly still, anchoring their focus on his words. The final word lingered, then faded into the rustle of movement. The children stood. The grass around them was flattened where they had sat for hours. A boy near the edge reached down, gripped a classmate's forearm, and pulled him to his feet. Others followed. They began to collect their belongings, but the frantic pace of the morning was gone. One girl paused, looked at a peer who had mocked her earlier,
and instead of turning away, she reached out to help gather a scattered notebook.
The tension that had defined their interactions just hours ago seemed to dissipate, replaced by a quiet, deliberate focus. They formed small groups, moving together toward the slope that led back to the city. The city sprawled below, a grid of concrete and noise. Yet as they walked, they kept their pace steady and their voices low. They left behind the weight of past grudges on the hillside, carrying only the resolve to apply what they had heard. The mountain air grew thinner as they descended. They were heading into the classrooms and the playgrounds, moving toward the very people they once avoided. The hillside sat empty, but the impact of the afternoon followed them, shifting the rhythm of their steps as they prepared to meet the world again.